Hello, my name is Mark Hoffititz, and I serve as the Resource Sharing Program Manager for the Boston Library Consortium. This presentation will explore BLC's Digital Lending Toolkit, a comprehensive resource designed to support libraries and consortia in navigating the evolving landscape of digital resource sharing. Thanks for watching to learn about this exciting resource developed for and in partnership with the library community. Before we dive in, a quick overview of the presentation. First, I'll provide some background on BLC as a library consortium and our specific work in resource sharing. Next, I'll provide some context for the toolkit's creation, as well as several unexpected roadblocks and speed bumps along the way. Then we'll dive into the content of the toolkit, reviewing each of the main sections and the resources included. Finally, we'll talk about future stewardship of the toolkit and our upcoming Digital Lending Summit in October 2025. For those unfamiliar with Boston Library Consortium, our mission is to empower a coalition of libraries in the Northeastern United States to share knowledge, infrastructure, and resources at scale, focusing on what we can achieve through the power of collective action versus what can be accomplished by a single institution. There are 26 member institutions within the BLC, which consist of academic libraries ranging from private and public institutions, R1 and R2 research universities, and liberal arts colleges, in addition to the Boston Public Library, the State Library of Massachusetts, and the Marine Biological Lab and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, lovingly known as NWILL Hui. While the original membership of the BLC was centered in the greater Boston area, it has expanded over the years to cover members from 5 out of 6 New England states. BLC's work is divided amongst 4 program areas: resource sharing, the area that I oversee, which we'll hear about in just a moment; resource management, which handles group licensing and subscriptions; professional development, offering opportunities for engagement and personal growth within the library profession; and shared systems and services, which supports our Network Zone project and seeks to identify areas where collaboratively owned services would serve the larger membership at scale. Focusing on the knowledge, infrastructure, and resources of our mission statement, but in reverse, the centerpiece of BLC's resource sharing work is our consortial borrowing program, which lent over 63,000 books, articles, book chapters, and ebooks in fiscal year 25. To guide and support our consortial borrowing program, the BLC resource sharing community establishes mutually agreed upon policies and best practices to set the standard for how we borrow and lend materials. We utilize Rapid ILL and Rapid R as our consortial ILL systems and use UPS Campus Ship to transfer materials across our membership. The knowledge and thought leadership of our consortium comes from our resource sharing community of interest, which provides oversight to BLC's interlibrary loan services and programs and plays a central role in ensuring that BLC member institutions maximize access to their library collections using innovative and cost-effective mechanisms to share collections across the consortium. Amongst this practitioner community, a number of working groups are formed to steward new projects or developments in the resource sharing landscape. Finally, BLC's broader resource sharing work is guided by a set of strategic priorities articulated in our 2023 Strategic Action Plan. These priorities include investigating consortial approaches to expand interlibrary loan of ebooks, enhancing resource sharing systems, and growing BLC's resource sharing network. In many ways, the Digital Lending Toolkit touches on all 3 of these strategic priorities, from working towards sharing more diverse digital formats to understanding and improving the systems that support unique functionalities within digital lending workflows, and by building a broader network of digital resource lenders by illuminating the pathways towards adopting other digital lending practices. And now for some background on the Digital Lending Toolkit. In 2023, BLC was awarded a National Leadership Grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, also known as IMLS. The grant was originally intended to support the implementation of Reshare CDL, a consortial CDL software developed by BLC and Index Data to support controlled digital lending workflows as a component of interlibrary loan services. The support of this grant built off previous grants and investments from the Davis Educational Foundation, BLC, and several other organizations. Our IMLS grant funded 3 main activities. First, the pilot implementation of the Reshare CDL MVP, which is with a subset of BLC member institutions through an early adopters program. Second, a CDL toolkit, which I'll discuss in more detail later. And finally, a CDL summit to discuss future directions and strategies to scale adoption of CDL amongst libraries. Prior to and throughout our grant period, we experienced a number of roadblocks as the legal landscape surrounding CDL shifted in the United States, and several other factors impacted our ability to realize the initial intentions of our grant proposal. Thankfully, we have been able to successfully navigate many of these speed bumps. In March of 2023, a federal district court ruled that the Internet Archive's activities related to their National Emergency Library were not protected by fair use. BLC had anticipated the launch of its early adopters program in 2023, but instead pivoted towards a software development partnership with two member institutions, Tufts University and UMass Chan Medical School, to enhance the Reshare software and test several of its external integrations. With the growing uncertainty of how the appeals process would play out for Hachette versus Internet Archive, and a desire to establish specific parameters that articulated the differences in BLC's approach to CDL, the organization's board of directors approved a set of limitations on our early adopters program and how it could continue. The image on this slide is a portion of the CDL for ILL best practices BLC had intended to use as part of our early adopters program and outlines the three main limitations, including the requirement to lend materials owned in print that are not available as ebooks on the commercial marketplace, a process for bibliographic verification to determine whether a book is available on the commercial marketplace, and takedown measures for publishers who did not want their materials lent through the early adopters program. As a reminder, these limitations were established in consultation with BLC's local counsel and are provided for information purposes only. For any specific questions about controlled digital lending, its legal implications, please consult with a licensed attorney to provide tailored guidance to your library, consortia, or organization. In light of this guidance, we worked to establish the infrastructure to support our early adopters program with an anticipated launch in May of 2024. However, given the continued legal uncertainty and a number of other competing priorities at our member institutions, no one was able to commit to the EAP at that time. While we were disappointed, we realized there was an opportunity to take all of the information, guidelines, and workflows we had developed and release them in a public report, which we did in October of 2024. The goal of this Reshare CDL report was to provide an introduction to the Reshare CDL interface and functionality, present adaptable workflows to execute consortial CDL requests, and identify future development directions for Reshare CDL, Project Reshare, and BLC. As we moved into 2025, the speed bumps kept coming. In April of this year, BLC received notice that our IMLS grant had been terminated, leaving the state of the toolkit and summit unresolved. Once again, we waded through an uncertain legal landscape as complaints were filed and several cases worked their way through the court to prevent the dismantling of IMLS. While BLC worked to appeal our termination and eventually submitted it, our grants were ultimately reinstated, though the ultimate fate of IMLS is still to be determined. Underscoring all these changes and pivoting was a question that continued to rear its head. Given the number of legal challenges and restrictions applied to this approach of digital lending, how effective or useful would any future toolkit be if it focused solely on controlled digital lending? After much discussion and engagement with our IMLS program officer, we decided to shift the focus of the toolkit and summit to explore the concept of digital lending more broadly. We felt that this would allow for a more robust and accurate depiction of the number of ways in which libraries are actively sharing digital resources and would help distinguish between the different approaches to digital sharing that are often inaccurately misrepresented or conflated. With this background established, let's dive into the toolkit itself. This is the homepage of the Digital Lending Toolkit, which includes a navigation bar to direct visitors to different portions of the resource. We'll briefly walk through each section and provide an overview of its contents. The toolkit introduction provides a bit more context about the resource, in addition to how we are contextualizing the use of the term digital resource within the confines of this toolkit. There's a brief overview of the types of resources you'll find, including articles, open access books, webinars, workflows, and documentation from libraries who are actively lending digital resources through various approaches. The introduction also touches on a recurring element of the toolkit, a set of action items to provide concrete, actionable ideas for how readers can take what they've learned from the toolkit contents and make actionable changes at their libraries to further their digital lending practices. We hope these action items are used as is or as a template to inspire additional activities to further different aspects of digital lending. The first main section of the toolkit focuses on the acquisition of digital resources through a number of access models, from traditional licensing to shared electronic resource understanding, or SERU, to digital ownership. It begins with key terminology in collection development and acquisitions before providing a number of licensing resources, including principles, checklists, and sample license language from libraries and consortia. The SERO portion summarizes the 2012 NISO standard and its past adoption in academic libraries. Resources on negotiation follow, offering webinars, open educational resources, and case studies to help library workers build practical skills in navigating negotiations. The section concludes with an exploration of the concept of digital ownership and how libraries and vendors are working to realize true ownership of digital resources in a manner akin to traditional physical resources. The section on controlled digital lending highlights the timeline of the Hachette versus Internet Archive litigation in the United States, including the key legal documents associated with the case's proceedings. This section also highlights the work of the NISO Working Group, tasked to develop a standard for interoperable systems of CDL. While NISO made the decision to not officially release the standard following publisher backlash, the working group's efforts were documented through a number of presentations highlighting the different models of CDL and how they will need to be approached from a technical standards perspective. Finally, a number of workflows and resources have been included from libraries who are actively using CDL to lend their library collections. These tools have been categorized based on their contextual use, from general library circulation to course reserves to interlibrary loan. The next section delves into the two main approaches of lending ebooks through interlibrary loan, without digital rights management and with digital rights management. The DRM-free approach has been championed by the Viva Consortium, University of Connecticut, BLC, and many others as the preferred method for sharing licensed ebooks. The DRM ebook ILL approach has seen success through the development of Occam's Reader, a technology developed by Texas Tech and the Greater Western Library Alliance to support controlled loans of ebooks. Another effort detailed in the toolkit is the ProQuest ebook ILL pilot, which sought to test the scaling of DRM ebook loans through regional cohorts. The media licensing section focuses on exploring the ecosystem of streaming media and how it differs from other electronic library resources. This section provides a number of sample licenses from prominent streaming media vendors and highlights a number of efforts to lend streaming media through interlibrary loan, as well as the potential application of CDL principles to physical videos. The last main section of the toolkit covers systems that support digital lending workflows and focuses on the topics of interoperability and Crosslink, which is a fellow IMLS-funded project seeking to develop a middleware solution that allows for broader interoperability between cataloging and resource sharing systems. The main feature of this section is an extensive inventory of digital lending systems that support different parts of the digital lending workflow, from processing or brokering requests to hosting born digital or digitized resources to platforms that allow for viewing and reading digital resources. Looking forward, we will plan to update the toolkit at regular intervals to ensure the included tools and resources stay up to date. In doing so, we encourage the resource sharing community to please share any workflows and resources pertaining to digital lending that they would like us to consider including in the toolkit. In particular, we're curious to include more information on additional digital lending software in the digital lending systems inventory. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we'll be concluding our IMLS grant work by hosting a digital lending summit this October at Boston College. Registration for the event is free and open to all library workers, and there are options for in-person participation as well as remote viewing of the summit's panel sessions. To find out more about the summit and register to attend, please check out our website at blc.org/digital-lending-summit. And with that, I thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and connect. Take care.